Are we good? Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Here we are on December the 2nd. 4:10 almost. I'm at Council Chambers. Many are virtual. Before we begin, the call to order. Again, thank you very much if you participated yesterday, and I see several of you did. We'll try and make this meeting as crisp as we can. Just in terms of lessons learned, it's not a live meeting in the sense that you're here in chambers, which was the case in prior years. So Zoom presents a few issues. One of them is the chat function, which those of you who do a lot of Zoom calls, there's different reasons for the chat function, largely administrative. It's not really intended to be interactive between the members and certainly not with the gallery. So as a protocol, this is a formal meeting, but to facilitate somewhat interactive resident participation, as I did last evening, I'll intersperse the meeting with public participation, and it would be at the basis on a 2 minutes per any topic you like. My guidance is this, twofold. Firstly, 2 minutes is 2 minutes. It is not 4.5 minutes. You will hear the bell go. You've got about 20 seconds to conclude, or unfortunately, you will be muted here. And the purpose is to facilitate as many people who wish to speak as possible. The second is that if you stated a position already, and some of the resident participants have, and we did 3 different participations yesterday, and frequently the message was the same. Please, we would appreciate your focus on what's on the agenda today, and if you've got commentary on that, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. So, other final thing is that at the conclusion of the schedule per se, which is the workshop that the CAO will be running through, we'll pause. We will do an interaction part with the residents. At that point, I will, it won't be a new piece of the agenda, but we'll be doing what I would call council concentric topics, which I'll be asking council to pull out certain parts of the things, of the workshop that's been presented over 2 days, and ask which are near and dear to them, with the objective of getting perhaps to 10 topics. I'm not stuck on the 10 number, but let's just call 10 for a number, arbitrarily 5 members times 2. And some play within that, and I'll be doing a poll of the councillors, and so they can make their would like to see accomplished this year list. And if we don't have, I'm not looking for consensus amongst the council members, because I just want it on the table, and we can carry it forward to our December the 15th meeting, and then ultimately conclude this when we get the final of the strategy session in the first session in January. So I'm going to presume that's fine with everybody, and I will now call the meeting to order, Carla. And so I'm looking forward to adoption of the agenda, which is a continuation of last night's agenda. Can I have a show of hand from a councillor? Thank you very much. And we will proceed. If there's any other changes to the agenda which I've laid out, so council members, this is your opportunity. Again, with a show of hand, and unmute yourself, otherwise we'll go right to public participation. Councillor Barmayer, please. Unmute.
Yeah, I have no comments or changes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barmayer. There being no other hands, I apologize looking down at my stuff and looking up at the screen. I'll work that out in the next meeting. Yes.
I have an additional ad that I'll be speaking to when we get to planning item number N, which is the development piece.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. And can everybody hear the CAO? He's masked now. It's hard to tell from here whether you can hear. Is that okay? Councillor Abbott? Yes. Councillor Bain, you can hear. Good. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, just a question on these on-table additional items. There was some correspondence that came late. There's CEO's about to present something else. I couldn't find them on the website. Someone was asking me where they got them. They don't seem to be loaded to the agenda. Probably short notice now to ask, unless Carla can do some wizardry in the background so that residents and others can see these documents.
Yeah, usually we don't add on-table items before you add them or make the motion to add them on the agenda. So I don't usually add them prior to the meeting, but I could do it right now.
Councillor Abbott, were you able to hear the meeting administrator?
I was.
Thank you, good, wow, that's a good system. Okay, I will, Councillor Abbott, you get a second kick at the cat on this one. I think correspondence will be the semi-final item before we go into camera. And I'd like to, the CAO has some ideas on what we do with the correspondence that's here before us and that's coming in or coming in almost by the minute to some late stairs. So I'd like to deal with that all at the same time, if that's okay with you. And the issue is who's been received, who hasn't, and what do we do with it? If that's good with you?
Sure, that's fine. I'll just like to see if we can find a way for residents to get access to it and not have to see it once we publish the minutes sometime down the track.
Just to get
sooner like tonight if we could.
Just to get to the end, what do we do with the last minute stuff that comes in? Does it get?
Yeah, it normally gets posted with the minutes when we post those on the website, but Carla, are you able to post those items?
Yeah, just I'm gonna have to, you can continue on, you just won't see them on the screen for a second.
Just.
But you can continue with the meeting.
I'm a big deal. Thank you. I've got a different screen than everybody. We'll just sit tight for a second. Oh, it's okay, we'll hold it a minute.
Okay, not sure I'll be able to from this computer, but just continue on and I'll figure it out somehow.
If we circle back at the correspondence part, Carla, that'd be great. When we get to that, you can bring us all up to date.
Yeah, or I can ask my coworker right now and she'll just get it up.
Okay,
shortly.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Councillor Abbott, it's still a work in progress, but we're going to conclude it before we go. All right, I think, did we get to the adoption of the agenda yet, Carla?
Yeah.
Yep, done. Agenda has been adopted. Public participation, 2 minutes per. I see several members of the public. If one of you would unmute, thank you, Mr. Sredsky. You are first up. Sir, you've got 2 minutes. When you hear the bell, please wrap it up after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good day. I've listened to a session yesterday and wanted to comment since this is about the budget. I appreciate Mr. Abbott and Mr. Brain comments last night suggesting to be careful when accepting unnecessary projects just because the subsidy might be available. Yes, 60,000, it creates a dent in Lions Bay tiny funds. On the other hand, we seem to be very generous with office operating expenses. Serious example is, from my end, hiring Mr. Robert Whitney to propose in creating emergency planning. So far we have seen no results from that work, highly paid. Rolling out, the only thing was the paste and copy and paste article on tsunami last Friday, 2 weeks ago. What I hear from residents, we see constantly our administrators suggesting to build, sell, and add expenses. There's enough money in the pool. We are second highest taxes in British Columbia. Management is the method of handling the economy, and not just creating more projects. By the way, the inner village connector been proposed many times before. There's some good options that people came up in the process of 30 years actually, as it was. I or other will be happy to expand on this, just ask residents. We seem to have idea where we want to walk and what is the good for us. In such a project, residents could provide voluntary in-kind work, just like Mr. Baines suggested. Those are the opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sredsky. I'll pause here for a second and we'll go a little bit lengthier. Mayor Broughton, you're next up, but let me just respond quickly to Mr. Sredsky on two things. One of the things I took away from last evening was expenses. So I have gone back to our executive team and asked that they provide a breakdown of our administrative costs over the last several years, and by that I mean more than a couple, to go year over year with explanations. I will make that I'm going to do a State of the Union and 2 addresses in the new year, and in the second address I'll be mentioning specifically costs year over year with respect to salaries and overhead. So I got that from last night, and senior staff acknowledges it and appreciates it, so we'd like to put that issue to bed. On the second piece, in terms of the value of some of our other team, I defer to the CAO for a quick comment on that too.
Yeah, kind of take exception to what Mr. Sredsky said. Mr. Whitney's done yeoman's work, has provided us with a revised emergency planning document, as well as some of the documents that go along with that. He's working on a number of different things and has been successful in achieving grants for us with respect to evacuation planning, which is going to be underway, and with respect to other matters. So he has been doing great work for us and providing excellent value for his services to the village of Lions Bay. So I'll take that off the table.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sredsky.
If there's a report that this gentleman created work, why is it hidden? It's supposed to be ready by end of summer. Now it's December, we have a Christmas, and he's still hired and no work done. So where is that work, excuse me?
Okay, we'll leave you with that question, CAO.
I'll get back to you, Mr. Sredsky. We'll take this offline. I'll provide some answers to your questions, and not quite sure what you're getting at, but we'll take it offline, and if you have questions, I'll answer them for you.
There you go. So Mr. Sredsky, you're going to have a after meeting one-on-one with the CAO to deal with your issues. Thank you very much, sir. And I see Mayor Broughton, you are unmuted, so you've got 2 minutes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. I've got 2 items. So I just had one, but I just want to echo Mr. Sredsky's, because it's out there in the community that our trail team had been working with the village, and I want to know that each of the council members have completely read our official community plan, understand it, and have embraced it, because volunteerism is a very high value, and not hiring a consultant, I understand, from Whistler, who doesn't know our community as well. And my understanding is that the trail people were working on this, and in like mid-breath, we're cut out of it. So that's what's on the street out in Lions Bay. I'll just let you know that. So secondly, I am somebody with a pre-existing condition. I'm very uncomfortable that our CFO Pam is not wearing a mask tonight or last night, and Darla isn't wearing a mask either. And I'm very, no, this isn't funny. This is about bringing COVID into our community. This isn't funny. Premier John Horgan said that it was mandated in all public buildings, in all stores, and in all public spaces today at about 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock on television. And that $7,000 worth of fines were given over the weekend. And honestly, if somebody walked into Chambers right now, fines would be given. I do not expect the exposure to this community, where out of the village office comes COVID, and is spread, because we have somebody from this community, that community, in this bubble or that bubble, with kids in these sports activities or those sports activities. So I'm saying this not lightly, and I see eyes rolling, Pam, and not appreciated. This is a very serious, excuse me, this is a very serious point that I'm making, and I do expect you to wear a mask. Thank you.
And with respect, I did not roll my eyes at all. I was waiting for you to finish, and I'm getting my mask, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Broughton. I think the first thing that you made,
Very serious issue in British Columbia. We've had 54 people die in the last 3 days.
Mayor Broughton,
Died prior to that in the last few days.
thank you, Mayor Broughton. Could you mute yourself, please?
Yes, I'll be, yeah.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I'm sure that I can speak on behalf of all of council that we're extremely familiar with the OCP. On the other piece, thank you. The CFO is wearing a mask, and I think we all understand the issue. Thank you very much. I've got time for one, I don't have my time. There's time for one more speaker. If somebody would like to unmute, that would be fine. I'm going to go in a second. Last chance. Going, gone. All right, concluded. On that one, thank you very much, residents. I will pick an opportune moment in our next, in the community planning piece, which is fairly lengthy, that we can break in there and give you another opportunity. So with that, I'll hand it over to the CAO, to John.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr.
Oh,
Mayor,
sorry.
I have my hand up.
Sorry, Councillor
I have my
Abbott.
hand up. I just, a short mention on public participation we just heard, and I thought, I'm not 100% sure I understood what Mr. Stretsky was asking, but I think part of it might be Robert's ongoing contract, which I'm sure we discussed elsewhere, as well as the deliverables and the deadlines for those deliverables. I think understanding that might help to answer his question. Peter, CEO, maybe that's part of it. And then once again, we appreciate the support for volunteer efforts. I just want to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm also sure that you appreciate Mr. Whitney's efforts, unless you advise me otherwise.
I'm on the committee working with him, yes, I appreciate his efforts.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Abbott, CAO.
Okay, before I commence with the supported community planning section of the agenda, I just wanted to make one comment, and that's that I don't really understand Ms. Broughton's comment about trail volunteers being supplanted by Whistler consultants. We don't have any consultants with respect to trails, certainly none from Whistler. So I'm not sure where that's coming from, but I just wanted to make it clear that that's not the case. So moving on. I'm just going to, perhaps what I'll do is pause after each of these items that I'm going to go through for any comment from council or questions.
Just CAO, before you go, I know we're dying to get through this. I ask that you move as crisply as you can through this.
All right. Would you prefer then that I just keep moving along and then come back for questions?
Maybe after, say, 3 or 4 points.
Okay.
Thank you.
So first up that we have here is the plans with respect to building bylaws and updating that to perhaps pursue the objectives that would be in line with climate action objectives that can, some of which can be achieved through building bylaw means, and I can touch on that again on a later subject point. We have, as an item here, apply for provincial license of occupation for water zones, W2 water zones, but it is long-term. There was some initial research done on this that indicated the complexity of the matter in terms of what we were hoping to achieve. There was some indication that there was examples elsewhere. I know that Ms. Broughton referred to examples in Bowen Island and in West Vancouver, some of which we have looked at, but it's certainly something that is on our radar, but not on our immediate radar. C, consider natural hazards development permits associated with OCP amendment. Redistribute previous materials. So that has to do with the proposal for development permit areas in order to accommodate development in the face of natural hazards, which we have plenty of in Lions Bay. There has been a fair amount of work done on this, but it has yet to achieve a consensus at the last council, and this council hasn't yet had an opportunity to delve into it, but that is planned in the near future. Hand in hand with that would be Community Amenity Contribution Policy, or CACs as they're oftentimes referred to. And again, work has been done on that, and some additional work has been done at the beginning of this year before the pandemic hit. But those two things will come together. And before perhaps going on any further, I'll pause and see if anybody's got any comments. Any council members have any comments or questions?
Peter, do you said due course, do you have a timeline in mind on any of those? And is there any further public engagement? Because I'm sensitive to what was raised last night by Brenda Rouson as well as others. This might not be the time until we get through this COVID and vaccine thing to be doing things that involve public engagement, which is always better done in a more sort of personal space than Zoom meetings. But any comment on that?
My intent was to reintroduce the subject matters to council in the first half of this year. The aspects of those matters that for which public consultation would be an aspect of are certainly complicated by the ongoing pandemic and the inability to have, for example, a town hall in our facility. But I say that there are still opportunities and options to distribute information and to have facilitated perhaps discussions online via Zoom or other means. There are a number of communities that are doing all kinds of things in terms of online town halls and public consultation sessions, so that things are not at a standstill. Whether or not council is comfortable getting to a decision-making point in that process without having in-person consultation is something that I think council will have to determine when we get to that point. Hopefully, by the end of summer, we'll be opening up with a vaccine widely distributed. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But I think that the process can be started in terms of reintroducing or introducing this council to the materials and to have some background discussion. There can be some, perhaps a council strategy committee meeting or two on the subject matter. Have some back and forth. There'll probably be questions for which staff will have to come back with answers or different options, ideas can be explored. So I see it as an iterative process that we should embark upon this spring, and we'll see where we get and how long it's going to take and what sort of timelines and decision-making processes and consultation processes come out of it. But it is the intent to get back to it so that it's not left on the shelf and in a place, leaving us in a place where we're not able to advance other matters that the community needs to be moving forward on.
Councillor Barmier, you have a question, and then Councillor Cunliffe.
Yeah, I guess when you talk about redistributed previous materials, I guess reading between the lines, we haven't made any adjustments to that document. I guess it's probably more of a comment than a question, and I suspect we'll just draw this out. That concerns me a little bit. I was hoping we would come back with something a little leaner and more lines-based centric, and then in concert with that, it kind of it speaks to the lack of a risk tolerance policy within the village to understand what our tolerance is for perceived risks or hazards. And I really think that's kind of the baseline that we have to establish at some point. I don't think we're going to get around it. Yeah, those are my two comments around the DP. I do think it's something we just need to get across the finish line. I don't think it should take much longer than a couple of months to get that thing out the door, hopefully by the summer, so we can just put this to bed.
So if I can respond to that.
Please.
So I appreciate your comments, Councillor Barmeyer. However, something that you said, which is the comments with respect to risk tolerance policy, is something that is at the core of this DPA issue. It is something that council, together with the community, through consultation with the community, and through exploration of options as to what the different levels or thresholds of risk tolerance might be, is something that is part and parcel of dealing with this subject matter. I don't think it's something that we can just rush through in a couple of months and then turn around and say, oh, now we need to address a risk tolerance policy. That needs to be part of this discussion. It needs to be, it's central to the whole concept of setting up a development permit area to accommodate development in the face of natural hazards. It's all laid out in the Community Charter and the Local Government Act as to how communities can do this, but every community is going to have its own approach to what that looks like in terms of their own risk thresholds and how to deal with those things. But it is part and parcel of the whole conversation. So I anticipate it's going to be much longer than a 2-month exercise. I anticipate it'll be several months, and to Councillor Abbott's point, I think it does depend on the ability to have a meaningful consultation process with the community about it, so that people understand what we're talking about, and so that they have the opportunity to weigh in on it and give council a feeling for how members of the community are feeling about the matter and where their comfort level might be in respect of things like risk tolerance policy.
Councillor Barmier, if you're fine with that, I know that this item is going to come back later. If you want to park it.
No, I appreciate that. I didn't say 2 months. I meant by the summer, end of summer.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cunliffe?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when it comes to public consultation, we need to be adaptable and we need to be creative, and we need to realize that a town hall in its traditional sense could be very unlikely for a year. So Zoom is a platform, it is being used, it may not be ideal, but it is potentially the new normal for who knows how long. So we can't be gun shy in that matter. people can drop off letters, email, write, they can add all of the consultation they want. It might even actually engage more people and be more focused than a traditional town hall where you do run the potential of people just talking over each other. So that's just my comment on consultation and going forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe. I know from my fellow and sister mayors, I know in Vancouver, public consultation means 6 hours a day on Zoom. I know that in Squamish, it means they block off their gym and people stand far apart. Well, previously they stood far apart, I don't think so now, and had their time. I think that this is a key point that you raised, is we want to have public engagement, and we will have public engagement. And not just to the best that we are able, but we want to have solid engagement. And I know I reflect all of us on that one. We are going to bring this topic back a little bit later, so CAO, if you could continue.
Okay. The next item is develop and implement initiatives with School District 45 to help support Lions Bay School. And there was a piece of correspondence that we received in respect of school matters. And the next one is scope the effort to inventory, assess condition and manage trails in Lions Bay, consider outsourcing and maintenance for emergencies. The Public Works Manager and myself have discussed, not recently mind you, but we have discussed ways in which we can engage the volunteers that we do have at this point to assist with trails management and maintenance. We do need to update our volunteer policy in that respect, as well as in any event to cover off things like the upcoming 50th anniversary committee work that will be done, and the events that we expect will happen throughout 2021. And there were letters received with respect to trails, one from former Mayor Burr and another one from Mr. Hurst. The next item is develop a boulevard encroachment bylaw to address encroachment and vegetation. As council knows, that one's been on our short list for a little while, and we fully intend to bring that forward in the very near future. Public Works Manager Jaffer and myself have been accumulating materials, and we'll be sifting through that in the spring and bringing forward options to address that. Again, there was a letter that touched on that from Mr. Burr. The next item is further develop the emergency program to meet our municipal legal obligations and policy objectives. Council has adopted a new emergency program bylaw that Mr. Whitney helped put together, and some of the other initiatives that he's been working on as well have been coming to fruition. Negotiate long-term provincial lease at Upper Brunswick. Plan to move the public works yard there. Complete community consultation for redevelopment of the existing site. There were a couple letters received with respect to that from Ruth Simons, who queried whether or not development of the site was a possibility, and from as well Mr. Hurst, who had some ideas about using the site for parking and access to trails as an alternative. The difficulty with that being the security requirements for Modi, and the fact that they do not wish to relinquish the gravel pit over which they have control for the foreseeable future. However, the upper area is available as far as we understand, and they know that we intend to seek a crown lease there. We had that put together and some of the parameters changed on us, so we're just gone through that, tweaked our management plan for the site, and we'll be submitting that shortly. And maybe I'll pause there, see if there's any questions or comments from council with respect to any of those items.
Just on the pieces about different aspects, you mentioned the Brunswick Pit area. Will this become part of the parking plan that you're going to bring forward when you do? Options are different locations and why we won't go there? And my thinking is, some of the community think this is just a perfect spot, but there are reasons why not, and to have it concentric into one document, that we're going to, pessimistic me, even though apparently they're actually vaccinating in Britain today, that if we have a repeat starting in March, we want to roll this out to the community as to why we're not producing more spots, and the parking plan will be the pivotal piece in this. So will that be part of that?
I'll make sure that it is.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Rabbit? Councillor Rabbit, you're muted. Oh, maybe.
Sorry, I was muted. Ruth Simons in her correspondence actually asked this question, and I wasn't aware myself what the answer was. I think you touched on it but didn't quite answer it. So Modi have a longer term lease on the lower gravel portion, pit portion, but the upper area is something we can apply for a lease, and that lease expires. And when is it?
So the upper portion is not part of the gravel reserve. So there's a difference between the two, and that's where we have the opportunity. But they've let us know in no uncertain terms that they have no intention of foregoing the gravel pit interest for the foreseeable future.
And when you divide upper and lower, is the sort of access to Crystal Falls the kind of boundary limit we're thinking of? What is upper and what is lower?
Sorry, what's your question about Crystal Falls?
I'm trying to understand in my mind what part is upper and what part is lower. So if you go up the road, you get a couple of switchbacks and you get the access to the Crystal Falls water structure, debris structure. Is that kind of the break line between upper and lower?
No, Nye's nodding his head yes, but I think of the upper area as simply the flat paved area at the very top of what appears to be all one area in terms of the pit, but it's just the top portion, and the flat portion at the very top is separate and apart from the gravel reserve. Nye, did you want to say something?
It's roughly what I was saying. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the line, the delineation is roughly along the road, the access road to the detention structure or the debris structure. West of that is the gravel reserve. North of that is the flat area, the Kiewit, used as a construction site for the highway. I will add that part of the reason that Modi does not want anybody else going in and out of there is that they have regular trucks and equipment going in there, and it's a liability for them to have other people driving up and through there. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So for the CAO, I think when you do the report, if we could have some detail on this, just to circle around on this.
Okay.
And I think per Councillor Abbott's commentary and the Public Works Manager Jaffers, I think perhaps in addition to some overview site maps, some pictures of what we're talking about, just for ease. And I think that would, I think this is, it's a big and simple opportunity for the community, and either we get it right or we don't. And I think there's some good data here we should share. Thank you, councillors. I don't see any other hands. I'm asking the CO to move briskly. This is a chance before we go. There being none, please go.
Okay. Next item is support initiatives protecting glass sponge reefs in Howe Sound, establishing Howe Sound as a UNESCO biosphere region. And it says promoting Howe Sound National Park. Bruce Simons has commented and corrected that the national park idea has been off the table for a while. Wasn't feasible or suitable, and so that one should be, that aspect of that item should be struck. As well, I would suggest, as she pointed out, that this item probably should include some focus on the support for the Howe Sound Community Forum, and which council and the community have supported consistently through the years. It doesn't appear on point anywhere else in the document, and I would suggest that that should be an ongoing item that is included within this. So I would suggest amending this to include ongoing support for the Howe Sound Community Forum and the initiatives that it produces, some of which include the Ocean Wise materials that council reviewed recently and endorsed support for, including the 7 actions that came out of the 2020 Ocean Watch report. So I think that I'll pause there if council wants to make any comments or has any questions about that.
There appears to be none.
Okay. Next item, work with Sea Sky communities toward intra-regional transit. So that would be working with, for example, the SLRD and the communities north of us to support an intra-regional transit service running from probably Pemberton to Vancouver, and for which, when discussions were being held, consultations being held, I did liaise with the planners for both BC Transit to the north and TransLink that were dealing with this matter, and so they do know that we are obviously en route and very interested in any progress that might be had on that file if the current provincial government sees fit to move the file along.
There you go. If I could weigh in on that, just a couple of things. I do speak with the, I guess technically they're the northern mayors, we're the middle point. The northern mayors in the Sea to Sky political riding, which includes the regional district, of which Furry Creek is part of, Squamish, which is a big driver, and North. Their issues with transit are legitimate. I can tell you that there's been nothing earth-shaking in that. This is just an information piece on that. It's a feels right, feels good story, but the engine is stone cold. I suspect this will fire up, and I've lost track of where it is with my contact with the owners of Furry Creek, who are about to develop a very significant piece of the lower lands, which would immediately increase their population beyond the very narrow base that it is now. And clearly there's going to be a desire for transit, so I think that would be our best chance relative to Lions Bay. In terms of just the Squamish piece, with their transit piece within their own within their own community, there are issues, and I'll just leave it at that.
So the next item is work with TransLink to the south on service improvements to Lions Bay Transit, and that's we've got it down as short to medium. I imagine that'll be ongoing forever. I'm
happy to report that Mrs. Mayor advises she's now getting alerts when the buses aren't coming.
That's good.
Which is a big step from last year, and they do know that we are in the pesky list when it's starting to snow and we better get alerts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Through advocacy and representation, address high noise and excessive accident risk on the Sea Sky Highway. We did have some correspondence on that from former Mayor Burr as well as Mr. Greg Leary. It is a file that we've got a short-term plan of action to embark upon and to follow up on in terms of the contractual requirements for the sound reducing pavement, and so that will be something that we intend to push forward on and hopefully achieve some answers and we'll keep going at that one. The next item is work with owners and developers regarding potentially developable properties such as small lot subdivisions, Kelvin Grove lands, public works yard, etc. All items that were identified in the OCP. Continue facilitating potential development opportunities that fit within the OCP. And we had numerous correspondence on that from a number of people, including Mr. and Mrs. Cosgrave, Mr. and Mrs. Ray, Mrs. Chan, and Mrs. Burrell. This item ties in somewhat with the conversation that we were having yesterday with respect to expanding the tax base to enhance the financial long-term viability of the Village of Lions Bay. I did circulate a brief information piece to council late this afternoon because I sensed that there was perhaps a little bit of confusion in terms of what the concept of development means for a village like Lions Bay. It doesn't mean 7-story city skyscrapers or West Band complexes that are not in keeping with the concept of what the village is about. What it is about is smart growth principles of development. It's about mixed land uses, taking advantage of compact design, creating a range of housing opportunities and choices, creating walkable neighborhoods, fostering distinct, attractive communities with a strong sense of place, preserving open space, natural beauty, critical environment areas, directing development toward existing neighborhoods instead of new areas that are not yet developed, provide a variety of transportation choice, make development decisions predictable, fair, and cost-effective, and encourage community and stakeholder collaboration in development decisions. Smart growth is the antithesis of urban sprawl. It is not a case of stretching our infrastructure resources thin by expanding horizontally, which is cost inefficient. It can cost you more to service that kind of development than it's worth than what you get from the tax base that you're creating. It's about ensuring that the development that you do fits within your existing infrastructure plans. It fits within your already built environment. So for Lions Bay, development based on smart growth principles offers the opportunity to enhance the quality of life of villagers, to contribute to supporting a very constrained tax base that's not financially sustainable over the long term, and addresses the need to take action on climate change. Smart growth offers the opportunity to replace aging infrastructure, both public and private, by building back better at virtually no cost to the municipality. If we're using the infrastructure that we already have, the incremental cost of servicing new properties within existing neighborhoods is minimal. It's insignificant. The benefits are great and can assist the village with the long-term financial viability that it needs to ensure. So we're talking small infill development, construction of duplexes and triplexes to replace single-family dwellings. This has negligible impact on our operational costs, and the owner pays for the connection costs and the ongoing usage costs through utility fees. Even in the case of larger multifamily developments within established neighborhoods, for example, had the Kelvin Grove proposal for 175, 185 Kelvin Grove Way gone ahead, that would not have added in any significant way to our operational costs. The property owner would have been responsible to pay for the water main upgrade and for the road restoration. So that would have been a clear net benefit to the municipality. Would not have in any significant way increased our operational costs. So it's not a case of if you develop, the cost is equal to the cost, the benefit is equal to the cost. It's not. The benefit is much greater than the cost. As long as you stick within those principles. There's a number of aspects that are expanded upon, and I'm not going to go into it all, but there's a number of aspects of this that also provide for enhanced initiatives to address our need to address climate action issues. So it's climate friendly as well as being smart financially and economically. It supports the three legs of the stool of the natural step, economics, environment, and social. It hits all those three in a triple bottom line analysis, and is something that we really need to explore in a lot greater detail in terms of what kind of development fits within the village of Lions Bay, and is consistent with our current OCP. We're not talking about remaking the village in a different image. We're talking about keeping that image consistent, but gradually and incrementally enhancing the tax base and providing a lot of other benefits through smart growth principles. So that's something that I think it's important for council and for the community to keep in mind, that usually, so often when you say the word development, people just have a knee-jerk reaction depending upon what they think it means. So I just want to make sure that people understand that when we talk about development, it doesn't have to be a negative. It can be so many positives, and there are a lot of positive aspects and ways to do this in ways that can really enhance the quality of life for residents of the village of Lions Bay. And I'll pause there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott, do you have a question?
I have a comment.
Have a comment? Please go.
And I'm sure much of this discussion will be had at another time, and obviously we don't want to give too long a debate tonight. And obviously this is in response to comments that I had last night. I think, or largely maybe other comments as well. I think what we need to keep in mind is that regardless of how small or how low density these developments are, at some point, for some people, it butts up against the single family, residential, quiet neighborhood cul-de-sac they bought, and that's when it becomes local, and others in the village that, try to think more globally, support those people that feel it locally. And that's when we have to, be careful with what we're proposing. And if I end up being the one that speaks for those people, I guess it's, or so be it. It's, I rather don't necessarily cherish, but I will do so, because I believe there's a significant number of people in the village that feel that way, and that see things from that point of view and want to be heard. And, this idea that we could be more like Dunderave, some people see that as a big positive, and others say, hell no, that's not why I'm brought here. So I think we need to be careful of how we go and what we propose. To suggest that 29 units in Kelvin Grove Way, which adds more than 30% capacity, actually might be 35 or 40 to that one street has negligible impact on the infrastructure, I just can't get there. The harder you make the thing work, whether it's the road or the ditch or water or whatever it is, the harder you make the thing work, the sooner you're going to replace it. It's not negligible. And a 35% increase in one area has to have an impact. So we'll leave that for another debate and some other examples. I'm sure we'll get there. My last comment is the statement, thoughtful development is antithesis of urban sprawl, sort of sits in the crawl with me. If you consider Metro as a community, to increase the density on the northernmost boundary of that community, to me sounds like the definition of urban sprawl, not the antithesis. And I'll leave my comments to that, and I'm sure we'll have further discussion at another time. Thank you.
Actually, thank you very much, Councillor Abbott, and I think your key point is that CAO's made his point, you've made your point. I think the whole issue of development is that for another day, but it needs to be wholesome, and it needs to consider the community that are, some who have written in that have said development is within what they view as a potential opportunity. And the comments that you make, I don't feel you are representing a narrow segment of the community. I think this is a larger community issue that needs to be dealt with. So I think relative to what you said, I think the comments have been made. I think we'll park this for now for another day.
Just one other suggestion or comment. We said we're going to sort of give public a chance to talk if they want to, sort of not just at the end. This may be a good place to pause, just a suggestion, but through the chair.
Through the chair, I forgot to mention that you were acting chair, didn't I? Thank you very much. Actually, I had drawn the line just below on item P, so I actually thought it was a very good time to stop here, because we'll listen to some thoughts from our residents and then scoot through. We're about halfway through this. So with that, I think we'll go to public interaction for a very brief period, and I have my eye on the clock. And so if it's an open game here, we'll give it 6 or 8 minutes. Again, I've already given everybody the game rules on this. You can comment on what you listened to today. That would be my preference, not something that came from last night. So that we've got a fresh bit of information here. So if any of the residents would like to unmute themselves, Carla, make that possible, then you've got your 2 minutes of fame. Anybody up? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Yeah, Phil Marsh.
Thank you, Philip.
Yeah, just on the last comment there, I can't believe I have to go through this again. Kelvin Grove residents, Upper Kelvin Grove, were unanimously against rezoning 175, 185. 20 years ago, we were still unanimously against changing that from single family. I really don't understand and just to reiterate what I had mentioned last night, this thing about needing more revenue, we need to expand our tax base because we can't continue on the way it is. I really don't understand that. There's 143 municipalities in BC, and we're second as far as our the highest tax goes. We're second only to West Vancouver, and you look at West Vancouver and the recreational facilities they have, the professional fire department, the police, the sewer. We're number 2, and 85% of the people in this village are on septic. I find it hard to believe that we can't live within our means from the current tax base. I just don't get it when you're looking relative to other municipalities in BC, especially, as I said, when 85% of us are on septic, and we don't have services that other municipalities have. Why can't we live within our means if we're number 2 out of 143 municipalities? And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I think in brief, thank you very much, Carl. I think in brief, Mr. Marsh, council's heard very, very loud and very clear for the upper KG Roaders view, and in particular the spots along that road that might be up for development. So don't think that your efforts have been lost. There are other opportunities throughout the village, and some of those streets may not share the same view. So we're not targeting KG Way. On the other piece, highest taxation is a combination of a variety thing. We have probably the highest water tax, or water and utilities payments relative to most, if not all, of the municipalities in British Columbia, and I'm going to speculate that's where the biggest part of our taxation is. Just in terms of quick answer, any other resident that's going to?
Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Broughton, thank you. You're on.
Thank you. So I certainly understand the Upper Kelvin Grove opposition. I want to say that I found it very interesting to the CAO, Mr. Dion, about smart growth. I thank you very much for going through that. I found it very interesting. And I do support smart growth. I wanted to mention under I, for your information, that we were in the middle of negotiating not a lease for that land, but and not purchase, but a gift from the province of British Columbia for your information, for council's information. I'd gone over this with Carl, but there are so many things, and you've certainly gone through many things. So I just want to mention that. And looking at that land, it's for those of you who are wondering what land, it's the upper part, it's actually the east. It feels like it must be the north 9, but I think it's the east because this is the west, but it's the upper part of Brunswick Pit, the flat part, and then the roadway. So down that roadway is probably one of our not our newest, because Lower Lions Bay is our newest, but very close to our newest water system. It goes all the way down Soundview, which is an unpaved road that is only designated Soundview because Jack Poole, who was the head of Bayonne Development, had a next vision, and the next vision for Lions Bay was that. Now, I only know that through the Historical Society literature that I've read. But what it is you've got the water there, you've got the road there. What else did I say you have? You have your PRV there, and you have your fire hydrant there. Right now, when you drive halfway up that gravel road, there's a PRV right here on your right hand, or there's a fire hydrant right on your right hand side. So it's got a great infrastructure, and then it's completely flat up there. So if you just wanted to paint a couple of tennis courts up there for the interim, that would be great. But we were very close to negotiating $1 sale agreement. So that's something that maybe could be ignited at some point.
Thank you very much, Mayor Broughton. You're going to get another chance in about another half hour.
Oh, can I just add one more thing?
Please.
want to support that we can live within our means. And I know that we can, and I know that just like having a water project or any project, it is about focusing on that. At the same time, focusing on what does the community need and what does the community want? What does the community dream about having?
Mayor Bresnan,
Making each of
close
those
it out.
things are accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, we're moving along very briskly. I'm hopeful that we have a very interactive session in another half an hour, 45 minutes. Thank you. CAO, could you, there being no other hands, CAO, could you continue? And public will come back to you again in half an hour, 45 minutes.
Okay,
Pete.
council consideration of options for future development of Ocean View Road right-of-way. So this was one of the three that were identified in the financially viable section that we looked at yesterday. So we do have a topographical survey complete for that, and I have had some preliminary discussions with potential developers to get an idea as to what steps would be required and what sort of information, get some feedback from people that know and have experience with difficult sites, because it is a steep site. I don't have my notes from that, but sorry, I don't have more information for you tonight, but it is something that I'm trying to push along and determine what sort of options might be available for that piece of land, so that council can make a decision one way or the other as to what's suitable and whether or not to go ahead with it. Next item is hire a consultant to draft DCCs and subdivision servicing bylaws. That goes part and parcel with the items at C and D regarding development permits and community amenity contributions. It's a piece that we would need to implement in order to ensure that new developments are contributing to the long-term replenishment, maintenance and replenishment of our infrastructure, and the servicing costs are being picked up in terms of the subdivision application process. It is possible to do one-offs without these things, but it is much better to have bylaws in place so that people understand what their obligations are, and it makes it go a lot smoother. Hire a consultant to do a housing needs assessment. So that grant application has been put in with UBCM, and we'll probably know fairly soon with respect to that. There was some correspondence received with respect to housing from the Rays at R7. The next item is start planning for undertaking a major update to the OCP by budgeting an amount each year over the next 4 years. That's what it had previously said. Added in here, consider accelerating the process with 30,000, just putting a number out, for the next 3 years, and/or community committee-based initiative. So the and/or community committee-based initiative was a suggestion that was put forward by Councillor Abbott as an alternative to hiring a planner to undertake and lead a process to update our OCP. I think that might be a good spot to stop and provide an opportunity for council to comment or ask questions with respect to this item.
Council, this is an opportunity.
I guess I'll go if no one else. Peter, when you said in this budget 30K for the next 3 years, you mean 3 times 30, 90,000?
Yeah, I think previously we've had information that, to to adequately fund an OCP process, generally speaking, you're going to spend more than $100,000. So if 90,000 would be on the low side of undertaking that kind of a process, which is going to play out over the course of probably a year or two. Generally speaking, that's what other communities experience when they embark upon that kind of a process. So I think that it's important for us to be prepared and have the resources that we need in order to embark upon that process before stepping into that.
Okay. Yeah, and inflation aside, I know our previous one cost a lot less than that. It was very much community led, or the original one, should I say, the version you're looking at here, not the general context statement update. And it was community led. There were subcommittees in each section, and I do think it could be a way to save some money, but I also think it's a way to ensure that it is community driven. So I still think a community focused update when we get to it, whenever that is, needs to be given serious consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I'm going to hold your thought on this because we'll be doing a budget discussion in another 5 weeks or so. I think it's a legitimate point, and it's about allocation for the future in terms of picking a number so it's not a lump sum. I think it's fair to say OCP is probably not going to happen in 2021. We're just, with the pandemic, it just doesn't have the right feel, and I'm sure most would agree. As a comparative, I do know firsthand that Belcarra just finished their OCP within the last couple of months, and for a community with 250 odd homes, the price tag for their OCP was $100,000. So that's just an information piece. I think the OCP is on the list for council to discuss in terms of budget and forward planning coming up pretty quickly. Any more questions on this topic, and otherwise we'll move on. Go. Mr. DeJohn.
Okay. Electric vehicle charging station project. Proceeding with preliminary requirements pending a grant application. So the grant application was submitted but was unsuccessful, and there are potentially other grant opportunities that we can look into. I know that Councillor Barmeyer has, Councillor recalls, not that long ago, he provided an analysis which, was comparing work that City of Vancouver had done, which is obviously a different ball of wax, but a lot of the principles apply in terms of what a business case might look like for an electric vehicle charging station. So I haven't had an opportunity to really explore the details of grants that are now popping out. There's been a couple in the last 24 hours. But I'll just pause, and I know Councillor Barmeyer would probably like to comment or question.
Yeah, the only comment I'd make is that I had a good meeting with Enercan after this particular round of grants. We've submitted at the tail end of the Eva Fidi grant, which started in 2016. So we were one of the last set of applicants to apply for an already very oversubscribed grant, and they've renewed the same grant, but they're calling it ZVIP, and it opens next year. So 2021 it opens. And we're much better aligned with the new grant, so it's a good shot for us to at least apply. But I plan to have a report together for council at the next meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barmeyer.
Okay, and there was a piece of correspondence received from Mr. Dickinson with respect to that, wondering about costs and efficacy and so forth. Next item is view bylaw That was what came to us last year. And council had determined to put that on the long-term list. And so the only question would be whether or not there's any desire to change that designation from long-term to anything else.
Councillors, seems like yesterday, but it was almost a year ago when we did our last strategy session. I appreciate that this is a living document and it will succeed our stewardship of the community. I believe there is no interest by current council to review this, but I don't mind leaving it on as a working document for future councils. But I'm also amenable to striking it. If council has a view, this would be the time.
I would like to see it stay on the list.
Thank you. Councillor Bain?
Well, we're at dead heat there. I thought maybe we could strike it, but I won't make an issue out of it.
Thank you. Councillor Abbott?
I think I mentioned this previously to maybe yourself or maybe it was in the meeting, I can't remember. Might have been the meeting last night. Can we take some of these items and create a parking lot, a list of stuff that's not going to doesn't need to come back unless someone wants to go take it out of there? And I'm sure I think there's a few in that category, and get this down to a more strategic document. I think this is a good example of one, unless someone really wants to visit it now, we could just move it.
Councillor Abbott, if you'll leave this with me, I've got something after we've concluded. We can go back to the concept of a parking lot piece, if you'll kind of play with me for another hour here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is climate action initiatives. Councillors Barmeyer and Cunliffe. I'd offer to co-chair a select committee to review goals, objectives, opportunities, costs, resources required to recommend a strategy to address our climate action responsibilities. I think this is something that is in development, and there have been collecting some draft terms of reference from other jurisdictions to discuss with council. And we had the representative from My Sea to Sky address council at the October meeting, offering to take on the Village of Lions Bay as a pilot community under a project they're working on to create and develop a public-friendly climate action report card tool to report greenhouse gas emissions and advance a number of different aspects of the responsibilities that we could not otherwise achieve with the lack of capacity that we have vis-a-vis other communities. So there's a number of different potential benefits that Tracy Saxby went through in her presentation, and I think it behooves council to act sooner than later on supporting that initiative. It can only be of assistance to us as a community, and certainly will help assist the Climate Action Committee in the work that they move forward with. So I think that's something that we can bring back perhaps to the next council meeting for further discussion on what that looks like, both in terms of committee terms of reference and support for engagement with the My Sea to Sky folks. I'll just pause there in case anybody wants to talk about that.
You have a recommendation coming forth at the next council meeting?
We'll aim to try and bring something for discussion. Not sure exactly what it's going to look like.
Okay, so that's more or less a week and a half away.
Yeah.
So this is going to surface again. Thank you very much. Any comment? It's a pretty meaty piece here. We can save our comments till the council meeting when the exec team presents a report, or we can have a brief touch now. Councillor Cullen, if I see you're unmuted, do you have a comment?
No, I'm happy to wait until council meeting. I just wanted to say further to last night's bringing in consultants, there are other opportunities through FCM that could be available to us for either very little cost and potentially no cost at all. So it's a work in progress.
Thank you very much. Your word on this topic is good enough for me. I will presume it's the same for all else, and we should move on. I'm going to guess yes. Thank you very much. And this brings us to wood smoke.
Okay. Next item is wood smoke bylaw, Metro's bylaw. Council to consider options for addressing the objectives of the proposed Metro bylaw. So that process has been completed. We did lobby Metro and provided them with a lot of information about the concerns that the community had. There was extensive survey material that was presented by Councillor Abbott at the Metro Climate Action Committee meeting. And there was feedback that we had from the materials that were presented, as well as correspondence that was received for this strategy session at R2. So from Jay Wright, Colette Etier,
And the McLaughlins.
pardon me?
McLaughlin's from...
Paul McLaughlin, Mr. Dickinson, as well as, I think that's mostly it. And some of those were not just on wood smoke, but also on aspects that came up with respect to urban containment boundary and the applicability of bylaw to those within the urban containment boundary versus inapplicability to those outside, or those areas that are outside of the urban containment boundary. So we had discussed last year a little bit about the urban containment boundary and what it means to be to have the designation that we do have, urban versus rural, under Metro 2040, which is the regional growth strategy for the Metro Vancouver Regional District. And the intent had been to explore that further with planning staff at Metro. I did make some preliminary inquiries, but didn't get too far before 2020 went down the hole, so to speak. However, I have recently touched base with the planning staff at Metro, and I've arranged with them to come and do a presentation at the December 15th meeting. So there are other things that were happening recently in respect of their evolving efforts on Metro 2050. So they're evolving the 2040 document to the 2050 document, including projections for housing and employment and other things for each of the member communities, including Lions Bay. And when I went through some of those materials, I had some questions for them. We had a bit of a back and forth, and I suggested that it would be a good time for them to come and speak to council about what they're doing with 2050 and what the applicability of that document is in respect of Lions Bay, what their projections are, how they come to those. And as well, it would be a good opportunity for them to talk about the urban and rural land use designations and the pros and cons of being in or out of the urban containment boundary. So that's arranged for the December 15th meeting, and I expect that we'll have some good discussion on that, or an opportunity for council to have some good discussion and questions in respect of that presentation.
Thank you very much, CAO. You pretty much did a twofer there. Thank you. I know council's looking forward to that meeting and discussion. So I note that is a particularly meaty topic, so council will rest up for that meeting. Councillor Abbott, in that we're having a presentation, if you've got a comment, please go to it, but I'd like to move us along.
A request rather than a comment.
Thank you.
I'll wait for the presentation. The request is, can we ask Metro that they give us whatever, some materials, links, data, well in advance, and preferably not just, we don't get in the agenda package just before the meeting. I think I'd like to spend some time, and I'm sure there's a lot of information to kind of go through.
Yeah, I'll ask them that.
Good. So they're going to do the 10-minute delegation thing, or whatever.
Well, I've suggested that we would give them 20 minutes
Yep.
for the presentation, because there's a lot of material to cover, I think. Both the Metro 2050 and then the
Yep.
urban-rural split issues. And then I also suggested that, question and answer period after that would probably entail at least 10 minutes. So I'm anticipating a half hour for the whole thing.
I think you might be shy. Okay, good. I think that the driver here is we would like to see this stuff before. So if you can ask Roger to make that happen. Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott, anything else?
No, thanks for that.
Yep, it's okay though. Thank you. Let's conclude on this topic, because I think the miscellaneous core stuff is pretty quick, and I'll go to community engagement. Since connector's already been dealt with.
Yeah, but we missed the parking plan. Wow, parking plan 2021. So all I got here is consider lessons learned from 2020 and move forward with a plan to address challenges. And of course, we had numerous correspondence on this particular matter from several residents in Lower Kelvin Grove who provided a petition that included a number of aspects, requests with respect to parking, as well as former Mayor Burr, Mr. and Mrs. Ray, Mr. Hurst, and Mr. Barmeyer. Councillor Barmeyer had some thoughts about ideas about parking in different areas and different means. So all of those things are going to come back to council. We presented recently, as you know, the 2020 rearview mirror look at what we experienced, and we're going to come back with some ideas about options for the various different areas of the village, and how we can create a comprehensive and cohesive parking plan for 2021, in the expectation that we're going to be facing likely similar circumstances as what we faced this last spring, and until such time as things improve, and even then, once the pandemic is over, I think what we've seen over the last few years on a year-over-year basis is an increase in visitor activity and coming to Lions Bay to access beaches and trails. So I think it was coming in any event. I think it's just gotten here faster as a result of the pandemic. So we will be revisiting that.
Thank you very much. Do you envisage that will be, I haven't seen the corporate schedule, but perhaps by the second meeting in January?
Yeah, possibly the first meeting in February.
First meeting, okay, so councillors, if you didn't hear that, it'd be the last meeting in January, the 1st of Feb, first meeting in Feb, so let's sort of park it as the 1st of Feb. I think that this is such an important piece, and we tend to have very busy schedules in our council meetings. I think if this requires, and CAO will leave it to you, that if this requires a special meeting, I'm sure we're up for it, to make it a one-topic meeting.
Yeah, or even a CSC.
CSC is fine. There we go. Councillors, pretty much the issue is, you know, it's coming. Everybody's got their own thoughts on it. We've got lots of resident input. I think we need to give this the full time that it's worth so that we get it right this year. We've got some lead time. And per the CAO, I personally don't see much of a change from 2021 versus 2020 in terms of we're discovered, we know we're here. I won't get into the specifics of the areas, whether it's the trails, the Brunswickers, or the KGs relative to the cliff jumping. But we've got some real issues we've got to deal with, and let's give it a good discussion that's worthwhile for it. Any council comment on this, or we'll move on? All good. I think, unless you tell me otherwise, we should whistle through the miscellaneous stuff pretty quick.
Yeah, I'll just go through it and.
So for the council members, we're going to go through the miscellaneous projects, the core work plus, and that's at the bottom of page on your package. It's the bottom of page 17. Once we're concluded that, we'll go to public participation.
So the first thing is, first two things are policies and bylaws, and there's a number that have been identified as requiring some attention. The third item is the asset management plan refinements. So phase 2, as I think was mentioned yesterday, will be completed shortly, and we'll have a presentation for council going over various different options in respect of levels of service and levels of risk identified with how council wants to address that plan going forward. Records management is something that we're doing on an ongoing basis in terms of updating and catching up with some of the digital recording. I think the next item is something that would be parked on that parking lot that Councillor Abbott brought up. Business licensing, I think I've mentioned recently about the efficacy of having something in our toolbox as a tool, both a tool to educate contractors who come to Lions Bay regarding our bylaws and procedures, what they can and can't do and what we expect of them, as well as to begin compiling data on home-based businesses. I think I'm becoming more and more aware of the volume and quantity and variety of different home-based businesses that operate within the village. And I think that from a planning perspective and ensuring that we're aware of the needs of the residents in respect of working from home, that we begin to collect some data on that. It doesn't have to be a case of even charging anything or minimal fee or whatever for our business license, but the importance of understanding the data and beginning to get a handle on that so that we can better plan for the needs of the community on these kinds of aspects as well as other aspects, I think is important. So got that down as a short to medium term. The emergency notification system is something that we're always looking to promote. The Brunswick Hill landfill closure report will probably be advanced this year, I expect. Risk management is something that we look to address for a number of things, including this property that's in Brunswick. Hazard mitigation. There's a few intake access roads, and there was a situation that we identified up on Alberta Creek near Timbertop and Upper Bayview that was a mitigation hazard mitigation that was identified and needs to be addressed. There was a price tag associated with that, and it was sort of pushed off to 2021 in last year's budget cycle. There is some additional information that we're still hoping to get from Ministry of Transportation with respect to some of the issues regarding that particular item. So we'll hope to have that resolved by the time we get heavily into budget discussions.
Councillor Barmer's got a question.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Barmer, you've got a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the business license piece, just a comment and maybe, maybe just to make a distinguishment between a local business, someone that's basically got their foundation for their business in the village, that I possibly understand needing a license for, but if we're talking about requiring outside contractors to get business licenses to do work in Lions Bay, you're not gonna get anyone coming here. So it's just a cautionary note. I don't know if that's what you're thinking, Peter, but it's hard enough to get contractors to come to Lions Bay.
Well, actually, all the contractors, or most of the contractors who come to Lions Bay already have North Shore business licenses that are valid in West Van, North Van, and City of North Van. So we would look to join that system. So it wouldn't be a new and separate requirement. We don't want to make it difficult or chase anybody away by any means. I hear you on that one. I think it's just something that we can seamlessly, I hope, get on board with and use it as a tool to educate those contractors who do come to Lions Bay. So I hear your concern though.
Okay, Councillor Abbott, another question, please?
Yeah, it's on the same topic. Councillor Barlow took us back there. Yeah, I do agree, Peter. Contractors are typically familiar with buying business licenses everywhere they do work. But I can also see someone trying to get someone from out in the valley to come do a washroom here, and it will be a stumbling block. The other comment I had was, you're talking about home-based businesses, and then you use the words working from home. Can we just get some clarity? We're talking about people who have a business based in their home. You're not suggesting someone who works for an employee, who is like virtually all of us now, who has to work from home, and has to do anything, correct?
Yeah, I misspoke there, and you're right. I didn't intend to mean that we should be requiring licenses for people just working from home instead of their normal workplace or an office environment. It is more directed at home-based businesses themselves. There are a variety of different types, and I think it's just important for us to get a handle on what they are, so that for future reference, it may become important in the long term. But certainly no, don't intend to regulate people working from home.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
The next item is, again, on hazard mitigation, but with respect to fire smart initiatives per the Community Wildfire Protection Plan recommendations. So the draft report has been received, and we're just trying to set up a meeting with the consultant and the members of the Emergency Program Committee to review that. So that'll take place shortly. And then hopefully we'll have some probably just smaller projects that fall out of that for the upcoming year, with a view to perhaps working towards larger projects in the future. The Lions Bay Fire Rescue burn building has been completed, so we're just sort of in the post-completion documentation phase and preparing policies so that external departments can use the facility as well. And something that is not on here, but which I want to bring to your attention is it was in the budget for 2020, and that was the renovation project for the Clap building to extend the bay, the apparatus bay. So just preliminary work has been done on that so far this year in terms of organizing the project. However, there was discussion that we had as staff with the fire chief, and we want to explore it further, and that is, the notion of expanding instead of just having the expansion out the bottom floor for the apparatus and having a deck on top of that, it would make sense to expand the EOC room, which is right above that bay. Instead of just having an open deck, the EOC room is too small for its intended purposes. It really needs to be a much more feasible place to set up an emergency operations center and to be properly equipped. And there, in the grants that were announced yesterday and today, there's an opportunity to make use of 100% grant in terms of paying for the renovations, not only to the bottom, but expanding the top as well. So that's something that we're looking into, and that I think we should explore further, and we're going to have to jump on that fairly quickly because the timelines are very short. But we'll have more on that at the next meeting. And then in terms, just continuing on with fire protection, as you know, I think it was mentioned yesterday about the waiting on reports from Electoral Area A study that's being conducted by Metro, as well as one from the SLRD. And the last item is probably something that should be struck from this list.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, which concludes this section, and actually concludes the information piece. I'm going to go to public participation in a second, but if there's any random questions from council before I kind of tie this up into the parking lot issue and something that's council concentric, this would be a chance to bring it all together. I see that council has no questions. I think this is a good opportunity then to segue into the public participation. Let's go 8 minutes on this. And again, it's a 2 minutes per. You'll hear the timer as it goes off. Please be short after that to give everybody else an opportunity. And I see that we've got a few folks on, and for example, welcome Ron. I see you were on last night and your video's on. You're looking great this evening. Any questions for us? You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I'm unmuted. Sorry, it's Ronald Dwyer. I joined late, so I apologize for not actually having my last name on there as well. But I don't have any questions at this point.
Thank you very much. Thanks for participating. Mayor Broughton, you've got 2 minutes. Please go.
Okay, sure. Just quickly, great presentation, great information. I just wanted as a footnote to the thing about Brunswick Pit for Council, for Nye and for Peter, that there's also an opportunity to connect directly with current Upper Brunswick there, so that you wouldn't have to use, disrupt current neighborhoods in Lions Bay. So I just wanted that as a footnote. And just with regard to the Emergency Operations Center, really support a larger room there. And just to the mayor, council, and to Mr. Dion, we'd had the fire commissioner come to Lions Bay at one point just for, coffee, tea, and look around at our facility and what we offer. And the fire commissioner would join my meetings with ministers to support our grant applications following that. And also when we had the we had a wildfire, And it was put out right away, but we really had to call on helicopters immediately, and it took them knowing, even though it's just smoke at this point, because it takes about 3 hours for those helicopters to get here from the island. Anyway, I just want to make sure, it just brought to mind how important, if you can get the fire commissioner to just come out and have a little walk around, she or he, and it just really helps in so many different directions.
Thank you very much for your thoughts and advice, Mayor Broughton. I've got time for one more.
Ron, it's David Shore.
Hi, David, you're up.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank all the councillors and the mayor and everyone that was involved in putting together this participation. And I really appreciate the extra effort made to get the documents out as a result, I think, of the council meeting that I was listening in on previously. For what it's worth, I think Zoom is a preferred and a simple way to listen while I do other things in the comfort of my home. And I think most people realize it should become a default addition to all meetings, in person or not, going forward. So when this pandemic is done and you may want to be doing this again, I would strongly urge you to do this in the council meetings with a Zoom link as well. Most successful organizations that have large stakeholder bases and are interested in either forming their product to conform with what their users want, or in this case, what council wants to do on behalf of residents, most will have a regular comment vehicle, perhaps a blog with comments, for example, where people can give feedback quickly and in the moment is also extremely important. So I urge you to look at these. There are many examples I can provide you if you're interested, but that feedback, all the data points you can get are extremely valuable, and that includes the chats. Without game rules or an eye on the clock, I get that there's a lot more comments than you have time for, but that indicates the need for more polling. It doesn't show a need to truncate the responses to a 2-minute limit. When people feel their feedback is genuinely appreciated, and without judgment or rebuttal or evaluation of the message, they'll participate. And keep in mind that most people don't feel comfortable complaining or pushing agendas or such. Most people are not going to be doing that. And this should be something that all people in governments of all size should be trying to pull in, but especially in a small community like ours. When people feel their feedback isn't valued, they just won't offer it. And that shouldn't be confused with any comfort that all is well with the resident sentiment, because a lack of feedback really should be a red flag to council. And any lack of efforts to receive it is much worse.
There you go.
So my question is, will council support multiple ways to have an ongoing open channel for feedback?
If I can take this one, Councillor Barmeyer brought a similar topic up the other evening, and I'd asked that we put it on to the December 15th agenda. His piece was on consideration of participating on social media, but I kind of see this as a morphed topic, and it's a way of expanding our base of giving chat or feedback. So, Mr. Shore, if it's fine, I'm going to lump your piece in and your thoughts and your advice and your offers onto that piece of our council agenda for the 15th.
Great, thanks. I'll be there.
Thank you very, very much. To our residents, we're coming up quick to when we're going to move on, so I'll go another call if there is one. Okay, Mr. Ulrich?
Yes, just a follow-up to what Neville was saying about people living here. With the comment that Peter made also about the urban containment boundary. You know, a lot of people live here, I being one of them, because I don't want to live in the city. That's why I live outside the city. And this is a nice balance between being in the city and being in the middle of nowhere. Yet it seems like there's confusion, well, at least there is for me, about whether Lions Bay is, you know, are we part of Metro or are we not? It seems like we are on some things and we are on not, whether it's, water, whether it's power, whether it's the library, whether it's transit, whether it's, this smoke, the wood burning stove smoke thing, which I'm pretty upset about. Can we get some clarification on what Lions Bay really is? Are we in or are we out of part of the city, Metro being the city, and how much control do they have over the things that we do here?
Very good question. I would think that, per what the CAO mentioned, representative is coming on the 15th, and this is pretty much the sweet spot of the topics he's going to cover. So what is, what isn't, the benefits, and there we go. So I would think that would be our starting point in this real work.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
fine with that. So, and just listening to the CAO, it's hard to tell who hears what, but it'll be an extended presentation, not limited to the 10 minutes normally. And there's allocation of another 10 plus minutes. I think this is probably, bring your dessert when you come to the council meeting, because I think this topic's probably going to be a big piece at the front of the meeting. It's not going to be given short shrift on this. And
Yeah, 'cause I think Neville is right. There are a lot of people that live here because they don't want to be in the city, and those that want to make it like Dunderave, maybe they should go back to the city.
there we go. Thank you very
Thanks.
much for your participation. And okay, I'm back to my main agenda unless you got something else you want to go to, CIO.
No, I don't think so.
All right, so we're getting towards the end of the piece on the main agenda, and that is, there is no mayor report, council committees, or emergency services. I'd like to go to correspondence after I dealt with two issues. One is, which Councillor Abbott brought up, and that is the, and I think I feel the vibe from my councillors on this one, the concept of a parking lot. I'll make reference to the information that we've had over the last two. It's pretty much the white pages and the yellow pages of Lions Bay. You know everything from where we stand with Indigenous relations to PRVs to the school to everything. And thank you for that detailed information. But I think a large part of this is the running of the village. And in my 3 terms, we've gone from no list to a very big list to working our way through the big list. And I believe there's a desire by council to clean up the list, or to use Councillor Abbott's term, parking lot, where it's really something that we don't want to be struck because it has value to future council members, that there was activity on a particular point, but it's really not in something that council's looking for an update anytime soon on. And I'm looking for nods from my council members on this, that I don't propose to do it right now, but I'm going to leave this with the CAO to think about how we might winnow this list down. Just arbitrarily taking long-term, there just simply aren't enough long-term items on there to put on the parking list. But there's other stuff too. So I'm going to ask council to take this list away, the CAO to think about it too, and to see what we might strike from this and put in a parking lot pile to the side, primarily so that, all information on everything is fine, but the reality is it's just not where our focus is. So I'm going to presume that council's in favor of that, so I'm going to turn to you in a second, CAO. So I'm going to presume council's in favor of that, and that we address this again at our next meeting. Sorry to make the next meeting a long one, but it's going to be, because I think there is a desire to winnow this list down. So if that is not the view of everybody, please raise your hand or unmute and speak up. Otherwise, we'll go on to the next piece that I have. So CAO, I think there's a bit of something for you to think about, or maybe you and I to work out how we winnow this list down and clean it up a bit. Not to say that anything's unimportant and we don't want to lose the work for future council. So that's a takeaway for the next meeting. And I think the other piece is that representing council, the summary information report that we've talked about for 2 days, I've made reference that it really is the white pages and the yellow pages of the book of information of Lions Bay on pretty much every topic. And on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank the CAO and the executive staff for the detailed responses and providing the information and the responses to so many questions. Council respects that the day-to-day stewardship of the village and operations rests with the staff. Appreciating that the engine that the staff is in charge of covers many things, and it takes priority to just about everything. That all said, council has specific goals that we would like to achieve in calendar 2021. And in a cooperative way, we'd like to bring those items forward and put them on a list that we can talk about again on the December 15th meeting. And that once the discussion fleshes out, I would see that something that, as we've done with outstanding matters, that we even briefly every council meeting or every second one, do a brief update on where we are with these key items that council thinks are important to them. And I'm going to again refer to my right. I'm going to presume council's in concurrence with that. And if there's a disagreement, please say so now. Otherwise, I'll continue. And I'll be putting forward some suggestions for this. And then I'm going to ask Councillor Cunliffe to provide hers, then Councillor Barmayer his, then Councillor Abbott his, and Councillor Bain to close. And I'm not stuck on the 10 items, but it should be in that range so that we can bring us in a way back on the December 15th meeting so that we can, amongst the council members, concur on what mutually we think is the most important things, and then we can ask staff to put some resources to and get feedback from staff on the likelihood and the deliverability. CAO, do you see any problems with that?
No.
Nope, thank you very much. I will start, and it's a starting off trying to get less, not more, but I have 4 items which I condensed into 3. The first one is the beach park, and in particular the washroom renovation. And currently we have a grant, and if we win the grant, we win the lottery. I get that. We get more or less $800,000 from the feds in the province, and we have an opportunity to do a platinum job on the park. We've already allocated, I think, from the CFO, $285,000, CFO, and thank you. Plus there's a smaller amount that's already been taxed, and that we also have the villagers' generous contribution on the Aaron Moore playscape.
That's all part of the 285.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so we're north of 240,000-ish towards a washroom renovation. So the piece here is I'm calling it beach park plan, but really I'm zeroing in on the 2 pieces, the 3 pieces, the Aaron Moore playscape, the kayak rack, which has been taxed for, and the washroom. So if we do not win the grant, and as you know, I talk to the MP and the MLA, and you guys talk to the province all the time, I'm hopeful that we know by early summer. I'm really hopeful by the midsummer, but by the end of the summer, we should have word. If we are, for whatever reason, unsuccessful, I want to turn on our heel and move right to execution on these 3 items. So that would be kind of it's not like this has to be planned for tomorrow, but there's the opportunity for community engagement in terms of participation in ideas, and also, as Mr. Shore pointed out last night, opportunities for tenders on this. So I'd like this to be one of the first items, and I think that's an easy deliverable. Although I should say it's easy, but I'd like to have the plan ready to go. The second one, and this is something that we kicked down the can, and it's either a dance or no dance issue for me. The pandemic has caused us to stop on this one because there are other more pressing issues. And there's reasons why this may not be such a big deal in the future, but currently it is, and that is highway noise. So I would put highway noise, we know who to talk to in the provincial government at the senior level. The public works manager and their CAO have direct links to local executive. And to winnow this down, either the position they report is correct or it's incorrect. And I think we're going to have to find out. I'll just turn quickly to Public Works Manager. Would that be a quick synopsis of that issue?
Yeah, I would think so.
Thank you very much. So I think that's also important to the village, and it's also one that's got a deliverable that's within line of sight. I did my last one, unfortunately, I'm not trying to shortchange my counselors on this one, but I think the CACs and the DPAs, which are a big topic, but a lot of the work has been done. I think that would be I'm lumping them together. I'm just lumping them together. So I'd like to see some movement on that, and my hope would be that we are in a position to, at the end of the calendar year 2021, say that we are either ready to move, not move, or we've engaged the community and we've got all of our feedback and we're ready to go on this one. And those would be my three. And CAO, any issues that you see out of what I've asked?
No.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cunliffe, your wish list, please.
I would concur with all of the items on your list, and to add to that, some meaningful action with the Climate Action Committee, getting that going, identifying, some projects, and as well as, of course, our 50th anniversary, executing it, funding it, and, celebrating with the village.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe, and needless to say, I support those as well. Councillor Barmayer, what's on your wish list? Santa's coming soon.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'll break form a little in that I want to start by just focusing on infrastructure in general, and I think we can break it down into some systems that we have in place. And one of the key tools we have is our infrastructure master plan, and I really want council to enable public works to exercise that infrastructure master plan. It's a really complex project that Nye has in front of him to identify which infrastructure deficiencies are the most critical. There's a whole bunch of things to balance, and I think we have to put some trust in our public works manager and support him in that effort and execute against the infrastructure master plan. The second piece is sort of along a similar vein, again, in terms of infrastructure, but it has more to do with enabling CFO Rook to fund the AMP. So we're making steps towards that. We're identifying, it was an eye opener, and I think we could use some articles and some public education around what the AMP is and how we plan to fund the maintenance and future replacement of our assets. That exercise highlighted the gap that we have, the funding gap that we have to be able to pay for all of our ongoing maintenance as well as replacement costs for future issues. So I think there's a couple of levels to this, and it's largely finding the revenue to support the AMP. And there's some projects we can do, right? We can look at perhaps village-wide metering, parking revenues, so that we can support some infrastructure gaps. At some point, we had the potential for a cell tower revenue. That's again money that we could pour towards infrastructure. And even the EV charging station, it offers a potential of $50,000 or $60,000 a year in revenue that we can also pour into our asset management plan. So this is sort of the two main infrastructure portfolios that I'd like us to support as a council. And lastly, on the climate action, I feel pretty strongly about pursuing this grant in February for the EV charger. I think it's a great opportunity. It checks a couple of boxes. It puts some modern infrastructure in place. it speaks towards climate change, and it also is a potential revenue stream, and not an insignificant revenue stream. So those would be my three.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barmer. If I can just recap and going from the easiest to the more complicated first. So I think, and thank you very much for the heavy lifting you're doing on the EV charger, by the way. EV charger is something that you're pursuing hard, and this is something you'd like to make sure we're pushing somewhere forward on it monthly. Does that be correct?
Yeah, I guess in terms of scheduling, the grant application is due February 2021, so it's actually fairly short order, so I'll jump on top of that right away. But that would not be a project that would be coming to fruition until probably 2022.
Okay, I think though that is, that's a multi-pronged piece. I think council's going to have to make that a budget piece, whether it's grant, no grant, or whatever. I think we're going to have to make this happen for you one way or the other. So EV charger is the one. The other one, which is the, I'm going to generously say that it's a communication piece as much as anything. It's how do we fund these things, and what are the sources that are within line of sight now? And you've mentioned, parking, the EV. We're also working on electoral area A. The fire department, if that comes to fruition, there's, property sales, the whole business. But I think for the sake of argument, I'll just be brief and say this is, it's less about the items that we're talking about, because you covered it in the first one, which is AMP, but it's funding sources. Would that be a fair enough way of putting it?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, so that's let's call it new funding sources.
Yeah, it's new funding source, and the reason I want to tie that into the asset management plan is because that creates the accountability, right? We have clear line of sight to where that money goes, so it's not just being floundered away.
Okay.
It goes into very discrete buckets.
And I think, going back to, so we've covered the two easier ones. The third one, if I heard you right, it was adherence to the IMP unless there's a reason not to.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. Again, this is still a work in progress, so we're going to be seeing this again. Thank you very much, Councillor Barmer. And Councillor Abbott, you're next up. What's your wish list?
Thanks, Ron. So I was struggling to get to two, but now that I have the option of going third and just voicing approval for others, it becomes a whole lot easier. So the ones that I strongly voice approval for from others would be the beach park washrooms, and maybe one further request of Pam's either to easy or not easy. Pam's able to get some sort of inkling as to how that is progressing, and we don't have to wait till July to get bad news. That would be great. But I certainly support that. And the washrooms in particular, as well as the rest of the beach park, mainly the washrooms. On Norm's thing on infrastructure master plan, that was going to be top of my list. It's right up there. It's almost a given for me. It's about everything else. And just building on Norm's point about enabling the workshop manager to get on with some of this, I think that's key. I think we have some bigger projects that are stuck in the study, design, apply grant chain, and they're not going anywhere. But if we look at the rest of the infrastructure master plan, and I've gone through it a little bit in the last few days, Ni's aware of that, there's a lot of other stuff that almost borders on good maintenance practice that we can get on with, that we're not going to get grants for. Now, obvious things like drainage, road repairs, these kind of things. I think we need to get that as a focus. So that's 2 votes of approval, but I haven't used my wish list yet. Third one is also a vote of approval.
You're going to hit the 2-minute timer unless you spit it out.
Well, it won't take much longer, guys. Also, the climate action stuff, I think that takes, there's a lot of stuff on the list that is linked into climate action. Ruth Simons gave us a connection to a lot of items that she thought. So I think that one's multifaceted, but they also would support Jamie on her top wish list. which brings me to my wish list, which is ongoing communication and public engagement. I'd like us to keep building through the have your says that we've started. I think we need to get common messaging through village updates, common tone, and as well as things through the COVID issues and COVID notifications. We need to keep improving on that. I don't think we can ever do well enough. I like some of the comments we heard earlier about other means of communication and about having some means to get data points and input from people live during meetings. And I assumed that COVID or no COVID, we would always have team meetings going forward. The world had changed, but if that's not the case, I certainly echo that sentiment. Lastly, so now I've only used one wish list, but I'm going to use another one just in case. But I think all I'm doing is supporting Councillor Bain, or at least I would hope so, and that is emergency planning. We need to make progress on that. We need to get deadlines set and completed. And please, can we not go into another year without an evacuation plan?
Thank you very much. So just to recap, because I know the CAO is writing furiously, just to put it in brief, regular and improving communication and public engagement would be one of your two wishes. And the other one would be, let's just call it emergency planning executed. Would that be correct?
Sure.
Good, thank you.
That would be correct, except I think Fred's probably going to bring that up.
There you go. Councillor Bain, if we've taken...
Oh, sorry, Ryan, completely forgot. I'm looking at my list. I was so busy looking at the ones I was supporting on others. Sorry, urban containment boundary discussion. I know we have progress coming on the 15th. I wasn't expecting that. That sounds great. But whatever comes out of that meeting, that understanding, I know we don't want to do much public engagement early in the year, but I certainly think in the early year we can understand those pros and cons. And to Brian Moore's comment earlier, later in the year when it's a good time for public engagement, I think we need to go back. There's clearly a lot of people are asking that question. So that's my two: communication with urban containment, and I'll leave the emergency planning as soon as Fred's doing it.
If it's fine with you, let's go with the two that I'd mentioned, of which within the communication and public engagement, UCB is one of the potential topics. You may be so convinced on the 15th that this is no longer important to you.
Okay, yeah, I would just like to make sure it doesn't die after the 15th.
No, it's not going to die off. Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Bain, I'm sorry that you are number 5 of 5, but there you go.
Well, that's okay. By the time I finish, you'll probably be tired of listening. Yeah, I've got mine in a slightly different format. I sort of went an extra step rather than giving a bullet point. I've got a bit of an overview and then a few details here. And I've also got it saved. I can send it off to you if you don't want to bother making notes. I started off by saying strategies of council should be overarching principles to guide staff and inform residents of where we see the village needs to go and how to get there in general terms. We commit to hearing resident concerns and commentary and to respond appropriately. And I'm listing some of the areas that were in the thing. In regard to infrastructure, very similar to my colleagues. We have the infrastructure master plan. We have other engineering studies completed. We now have projects lined up for execution. We will from time to time be made aware of much needed attention to other infrastructure projects as they come to the table. We do not now have enough funding to supply the needs of all or even many of them. Therefore, our strategy shall be, or should be, depending on what you choose, to limit spending on non-essential projects, to apply for grant funding for the projects listed in the IMP and other significant studies as we are able due to the extremely high costs of the major projects, to draw from the reserves as needed for emergency programs or rare significant opportunities, to limit borrowing as much as can be done without stagnating urgently needed projects, to work with staff and residents to prioritize these projects. So I've kept it sort of an overview without going into the details, because I think it's the tactics that come out of our strategy are what staff can work out. I go on to finance. We shall fund the core work of the village. I've got that as the first one for funding because has to be done. Staff shall maintain the excellent standard of accounting we now enjoy. And Pam, you can take a bow, thank you. Staff shall provide financial support of all the functions and aspects of the village under the guidance of the CAO and the arm's length direction of council policies as are adopted. Am I running out of time, or can you bear more?
I think you're pretty much done.
Keep going.
Got a couple more.
I'd please continue for another minute or so.
Okay. Organization, the village staff shall be directed by the chief administrative officer following the policies and direction of council. As there will always be more work that could be done, staff shall manage their time well to ensure the core work is done and limit their wish list projects to available time. And a footnote to that is council appreciates our dedicated staff and requests that staff to get good care of themselves, stay healthy, and limit their extra hours. We're also reluctant to bring in outside consultants as they tend to be very expensive for such a small community. And another point, the village shall welcome and engage volunteers as needed. We should be looking to volunteers to help out with smaller projects. Staff can't do it all. We can't afford the free market. Lions Bay has for a long time been dependent on volunteers. Volunteers have been instrumental in providing fire protection, ambulance service, social events, and a host of other services that have been hallmarks of this community. Professional service providers have been supplying needs lately as well. But we are not West Vancouver, nor do we have their tax base to fund all the best practices. We need to be creative and welcoming. And that brings me to community planning. We, the village, need to be looking ahead as best we can for future needs and opportunities. We also need to be responsive to the changing demographics that will undoubtedly come to our village. All community planning should be in communication with council and be responsive to community input. Like I say, I can send this all off to you if you want, so you don't have to take too many notes. Is that what you like?
I'm interested in receiving it, as is everybody, so if that you could circle to the regular crew. Councillor Bain.
You're welcome, it's on the way.
Thank you very much. This is I think you've taken Santa's sack with this wish list. I'd struggle in narrowing it down because there's some personal views in this, and there's a lot of good content in this, but it presumes that everybody is on the same side with all issues at all times, and as we all know, that's simply not the case. So I'm looking forward to seeing your item, and I'd like to bring it back to council to winnow it down and see where this goes. So if that's fine with you, there's a lot that you had to say there versus the other points were kind of very specific. So
yeah. Oh, sorry.
So I think that's where I'd like to go with it, and part of that is I'd like to keep moving on, and I think where I would go with this on the 15th is that the recorder and administrator and the CAO and CFO are writing notes down furiously. What we gather on the 15th, within this group of stuff, we're going to have to prioritize it and agree that there's resources to it, and whether it's where it fits in this thing. So this whole topic is just via the minutes. It's going to come to our agenda for the 15th, and I think that will be the next step on this one.
If we could make one final comment. It was a rough draft I put together very quickly. I know I don't have everybody's backing on all issues, so it's up there for discussion as far as I'm concerned. I'm not hard on it.
You're a respected member of our group and the community. What you did is just fine. I look forward to seeing it, and I think maybe there's stuff that we can all figure out on this. Councillor Abbott, you're up, and then I'm going to move us on.
I'll be very brief. Fred, thanks for doing that, and I think you've actually made a good point. This is a strategic planning session, and we seem to have got ourselves into a work plan based on a list that's been there for a while. And I think you lifted us up to the 30,000 foot. It is strategic planning, and we should maybe consider how we do these going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I think Councillor Abbott and my other colleagues, I think that's where after we've finished our work plan, we've developed what we'll call the parking lot piece, and also the core strategic issues for council, which falls right into where I believe everybody wants to go. So with that, I think, unless there's another councillor with a hand up, I will move on. And we'll be finishing up and going to close very shortly. Okay, no hands, there we go. So I think in terms of what's up next is the reports for mayor, council, committees, emergency, arbitrarily there are none. CAO, there's numerous items of correspondence. What is your thoughts and advice on how to respond to these, given that the number of people that took the time to write in? And the issues were, some were similar, some were all over the place.
Yeah, I think, we've tried to identify correspondence that was received that was pertinent to each item as we went through. But, I've got sort of a master list of notes with the correspondence index, with the items that each letter referred to. The invitation here was to the community to provide input, provide comments, questions, and let council know what they're thinking about various matters. And I think that in the circumstances, clearly council's had an opportunity to receive that input and to take it into consideration in going through these items and going forward has the benefit of having received that input. So I think probably a fairly straightforward thank you very much to each of the parties. Without getting into the details, some of them are quite detailed in terms of a variety of different topics. But I think that each ought to be acknowledged and thanked for taking the time to provide that input. And I think that's probably the extent of what the replies to correspondence ought to consist of.
Okay.
It's just a thought.
Just a thought. I will also be thanking, I can't name them all, on Friday when I do the mayor's message, I'll be acknowledging the number and the number who wrote in, the number who came in live, and their comments as well. Council members, so I think the synopsis is a relatively stock response from the office to the people that sent stuff in. I don't think the stuff that was sent in is, it's all going to resurface again as we move through some of these points. So, the easy ones are pretty easy, the complex ones are really complex. Councillor Abbott, your thoughts?
I agree. For some of the stuff, it's, you said, some of them are really complex and really involved and multifaceted. I think there were some that did ask factual, straightforward questions. Let's not lose those. Simply sending someone a report from something previously that they asked for, or referring them to a budget, or where it is. Let's try and make sure we don't lose those. But I'm not suggesting we do any inline debate sort of discussions through each email, but just to make sure if there's a factual request, that we do provide insight as to where we find the answer.
Thank you very much. I tell you what, I think that's a pretty fair comment.
You can go through that?
Well, you know what, here's what I do. I'll talk to the CAO offline, and we'll run through the list, and I will offer that I'll write back on some. I may offer the councillors to write back on some too. So why don't we just leave that as a work in progress? I'm of the view that if somebody wrote in, they deserve something back, and it's different in each case. So why don't I'll take that offline with the CAO, but not to think that the councillors are going to skate on this one if we're doing a lot of writing.
Just a comment as well, I'm told the additional on-table correspondence is now posted online, so just so everyone knows.
There we go. CIO will, I mean, it's the weeks, we'll get this done in the next week. That's fine, okay? All right, Councillor Abbott, your hand's still up. Are you good or something new? You're good? Thank you. All right, so we dealt with the correspondence. There is, I think we beat the new business to the ground. For those who are in the queue for public participation, I think we've got some time here, so I'll take, I can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of you. So you can see who each other are. I'm going to arbitrarily start. Colette, do you have a question for us? Question, comment? Silence is okay if you don't, and I'll move on. I take that as silence. Mr. Marsh, any questions, any comments? I'll take silence as okay, and we'll move on. Karen, any questions, any comments? I'll take silence if you'd like in a second, and then I'll move on. Silence. Mayor Broughton, you have the floor for a couple minutes.
Thank you so much. Listen, I'd like to thank everybody for the preparation that's gone into these two evenings or afternoons of strategic planning. Have your say. I would really like to applaud what everybody has said, all the input, but I want to particularly underscore the importance of Councillor Bain's input. That for strategic planning, it is vitally important. This shouldn't be a parking lot item. This is a vital item. He's listed fun core work of the village, for example. Strategies of councillors should be overarching to guiding council and council guiding staff. The infrastructure plan, looking at the triage there, we don't have all the funds to fund the whole thing. What are the important things? And then picking up on Councillor Abbott, good maintenance practice. You know, what can we do? How can we scratch our head and say this makes sense? Now it's nothing. It may be a day's work. It may be half a day's work. It may be a bit longer. So I really want to say that strategic planning is vitally important, and the points that Councillor Bain has made, they're very overarching points, and he's, I think, used the term overarching very appropriately. So I just want to iterate and support looking at those principles that he's brought forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Broughton. Thank you very much, Mayor Broughton. Mr. Ulrich, do you want to participate? Silence is okay, and I'll move on. I'm moving on. Mr. McGuire, if you'd like to participate, unmute, and there we go. Please have a comment. You have the floor, sir.
Well, I'm saying, I'm looking forward to the urban containment boundary meeting. I think that should be very entertaining.
I look forward to seeing you in the gallery on the 15th.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. With that being said, we've concluded the public portion, and we are going to go to the closed council meeting. So for those...
Or did you, I don't know if you offered Mr. Shrensky another chance?
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Councillor Farmer. You know what, I apologize, Mr. Shrensky. Everybody else didn't have their picture, and I felt like you were looking at me, so I apologize. Mr. Shrensky, you have the floor if you'd like.
No, I'm fine. I was just observing and learning. Thank you for your efforts. The idea, I think, is generally to reduce the cost of operation and impress the management of the system. That's where we can win. I don't see any other reason. Selling properties outside the village is fine, but ruining neighborhoods by plugging in the condominiums in between homes, it's crazy idea in this environment. Let's see how it will work out. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, sir, and good evening to the residents, because we'll be moving to the closed council meeting in just a second. I mean, there's so many reasons to go, and I will be having a drink first, but we'll say goodnight to the residents, because you're going to be shut out in just a second.
So, just as a sort of logistics thing, so we're going, mine came up yesterday, that's the link we're going to? There wasn't another link or?
The link that I sent originally with the calendar invite is the correct link for the closed.
So the calendar invite, if everybody didn't hear that, so if you go to your calendars, that's the one. Thank you very much. All right, the reason to go to the closed council meeting, which is on your agenda pieces, but I'll just be very quick on this. The proposed topics for discussion in the absence of the public are: 1, status update of potential disposition of land and development opportunities; 2, status of boundary matters; 3, labor relations updates. And on the disclaimer that the meeting be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections of the community charter, and where required, the council does consider that matters would reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. And this references sections 90, 1A, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N. Certainly CAL, there can't be any more. No. Okay. Council does not anticipate reconvening the open meeting for any purpose other than to adjourn the meeting generally and report out if applicable. Councilors, I'll put forward that motion to go into closed. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you very much. All in favor, ayes. Nays opposed?
Aye.
Thank you very much. To the gallery, you will be closed out in just a second. And councilors, please go to the link on your agenda and the in your calendar. Thank you.